Hello friends, welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash Agarwal and in this video I'll be discussing with you economics current affairs for 14th November 2024. I have selected two articles for discussion and I have created only one question for you to practice, right? First article is a very important article. It will be relevant in 2025, 26, 27, right? So this is a long time article, which is why I have created a question because I believe that you should try to practice questions which have longer shelf life, right? Which are relevant questions from a medium term perspective at least, right? Second article that I have selected is dealing with the current inflation situation in India. So it's basically a very current affairs article. It's a very newsy article. It tells you what is happening so far as inflation is concerned in the month of November, right? So naturally, no examiner is ever going to ask you a question that what happened to inflation in the month of November 2024. So I'm discussing this article just so that you are aware where we are headed, but I don't see any question, getting asked directly on that kind of an article, right? So I don't want to increase your burden. I want to make this exercise very, very meaningful to all of you. That if I create a question, right, for you, it should have some meaning, right? There should be a very good probability that this question will be asked. I should believe in it, and only then I should give that question for you to practice. Otherwise, I should not give. It's okay. It's okay to practice less, but it's not required to practice unnecessary and stupid questions, right? So that's what I tell myself every day in the morning, that be relevant, right? So I definitely believe that this particular one is relevant. Anyways, let me just discuss the article with you and I'll come back to this particular question after around 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, right? So in this article, we are going to be looking at a gig worker social security situation, right? So this article will first of all help us in understanding the meaning of the term gig workers very, very quickly and briefly, right? And how they differ from, let us say, traditional workers. Okay, so this is part one of the article. This article also helps us in understanding the meaning of the term social security, how it evolved, right? What are the notions of social security for a traditional worker, and what are the notions of social security for a gig worker, right? So both these things get discussed in second part of the article. Thirdly, what are various countries doing so far as social security for gig workers is concerned? So what is the United States of America doing? What is, let's say, European Union countries are doing? And what is it that a country such as India can do, should do? And finally, what are the practical steps that a country such as India can take, should take, so far as protecting the pensions and the insurance benefits and the other, social security benefits for gig workers is concerned? What should India as a country do? That is what the final part of the article will discuss. So if you look at it from end to end in totality, right? So this article gives you the complete masala that is required to be able to stitch together a fairly decent answer so far as social security for gig workers is concerned. Of course, you can add value. There is no end to adding value, right? But you can easily go above average, right, with the content that we'll be providing through this particular article, right? Now, why is it that we are discussing this? We are discussing this because gig employment is a reality. Gig employment is going to increase. Gig employment is here to stay, right? So whether it is your e-commerce sector or whether it is any sector which is getting disrupted using technology in a significant way, where you don't need a permanent workforce all the time, right? So that is where gig employment is going to play a very important role, right? So home deliveries of everything is now just around the corner, it seems. So there was a point of time when there was only Flipkart and Amazon when I used to think of home deliveries. But today clothes, medicines, and that too in a very short period of time. Okay, a lot of things used to be home delivered earlier, but now we're talking about quick home deliveries in half an hour or 3 hours or at max 6 hours, at max 24 hours. Nobody's talking anything beyond that, right? So be it home delivery of groceries, of clothes, of medicines, right, of electronic goods, of library books. For instance, my father, he reads books. Okay, so there is this library in Mumbai. Okay, and they are specialized in one aspect. What? That I want to read a novel and I want to return a novel and I am their member. So I will just use their app, say that I want to return this X novel and I want this Y novel, and you will not believe somebody will come all the way from 10 to 12, 15 kilometers away, catching a local train, bringing one novel, taking one novel. Can you imagine that, right? And that one person is basically somebody who is already retired, or somebody who doesn't have much else to do in life. Nobody will employ him or her. So they have started working with this character, right? So gig employment is not just for the younger ones. Gig employment is also for the older ones, is what I have realized through that library experience. You can check it out if you want, right? So home deliveries, it's booming like crazy. It's evolving like crazy, right? Now there is no point saying that acha, Swiggy and Zomatos of the world, they are exploiting the workers and all that blah blah bullshit. There's no point in doing that, right? Government of India has said that they want to use the e-Shram portal. What is this e-Shram portal? Right. So this is basically a portal to create a database of unorganized workers, because you know that unorganized workers constitute at least 80% of India's workforce, right? And these unorganized workers, they don't have contracts, they don't have maternity benefits, and they don't have paid leaves and casual leaves and medical leaves, and they don't have 8 hours or 12 hours and then overtime, right? They don't get gratuity, they don't get pension, they don't get insurance, right? So these are your kind of workers who are like working in your mom and pop shops, right? Who are very loyal, who work for a particular family or for a particular shop for 10 years, 15 years, and despite that they remain where they are because the fact that their work is not very remunerative, right? So how do you protect these unorganized workers? So in organized workers ke liye, we can create some kind of social security schemes. Now these same schemes you need to think for gig workers, because if you put some numbers, and these numbers are extremely important, what I'm highlighting, that as on date, gig workers, they are making up 1.5% of India's total workforce. And what is the meaning of the term workforce? Workforce is somebody who is, let us say, working. that's the workforce, right? Okay, let's just leave it at that as of now, right? And 2.6% of the non-agricultural workforce. So people in India are working in three sectors, as you may be aware: agriculture sector, industrial sector, and the service sector, right? So these gig workers, they are essentially a part of the service sector, right? So they're constituting 2.6% of the non-agricultural workforce that is employed in this particular sector. This number is growing fast. This number is expected to reach 23 million gig workers by 2030. That it's expected to become 4.1% of the total workforce, or 6.7% of the non-agricultural workforce. These numbers are extremely important, right? Extremely important. Now, what's happening is that gig workers, or the concept of gig workers, took off in a very big way, because it provides flexibility to the company who is hiring them, that they can hire them during peak hours, during peak seasons, and not hire them or not work with them during non-peak hours and non-peak seasons. So my balance sheet becomes stronger, right? So my operational profit becomes stronger, right? So that's flexibility for me. That's also flexibility for the workers. So let's say that I am working in a particular office from 10 to 6. After 6 o'clock, I will reach home at 7 o'clock, and I'll get on my bike and I will do delivery for 3 hours, right? So I do work for 10 to 6 hours, right? 10 to 6, and then I am making some extra cash, which is always very helpful for me and my family, by putting in some extra hour. So that kind of work flexibility is helpful for the employer, helpful for the employee. It adds to my earning potential. It saves the balance sheet, or it makes the balance sheet of these companies stronger, right? But there are certain welfare responsibility challenges, right? So yes, it can create livelihoods. There is no doubt about that. But we have to go ahead in a balanced manner, in the sense that worker protection, preserving the flexibility of gig workers, both these things should go hand in hand simultaneously. That worker protection is very important. Why is this very important? Boss, if you speak to the riders, if you look at those guys who are driving around on bikes, right? It's a painful exercise to the body to ride on a bike in a city like Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or Calcutta, wherever, for 2-3 hours straight up, right? It's anxiety, it is stressful, it is causing backaches, and eventually you will not be able to do it. And there will come a point in time when you will not be able to do it, right? What then, right? So therefore worker protection, therefore social security becomes very, very important, and you have to define it. You have to customize it for a particular class of gig workers. So traditionally, these social security systems, right? So they were associated with formal employment. right? That if I'm, let us say, a formal employee of a corporate kind of an organization, right? So the employers, they have to provide me certain benefits. For example, health insurance, health coverage, retirement contribution, pension, gratuity at the time of leaving after long-term service, and so on and so forth. So this is the traditional notion of social security. You needn't always stick to the traditional notion of social security. You can come up with a new notion of social security for the 21st century gig worker, right? Which gives meaningful and comprehensive protection to the gig worker, right? So given the fact that your gig economy is operating on a freelance model, on a model where the employment is temporary or contract based work is being done in a particular season, so gig workers are not tied to a single platform, right? Like for instance, a lot of cabbies in Mumbai, right, they use both they use both Ola as well as Uber, right? And if they get a third option, they will use that also. Very smart guys, right? And obviously everybody has to be very smart, right? आप वही प्लेटफॉर्म से बुकिंग लोगे जो आपको सबसे अच्छा डेस्टिनेशन दे रहा है, जो आपको सबसे अच्छा प्राइस दे रहा है. Why not, right? So the problem is that given the fact that a lot of these gig workers are working with multiple platforms, so can I force Uber कि चल तू पैसा पे कर सोशल सिक्योरिटी का and I'll give Ola a free ride or vice versa? It's not possible, right? So the idea is that how do you determine who is responsible? Is the private sector responsible or the public sector responsible? And if the private sector is responsible, who within the private sector is responsible? Right? So it's not just our challenge. It's also a challenge of the developed world. So don't blame Indian government for that. Right? That how do you create a social security net for gig workers? Right? And different countries are throwing up different approaches. For example, in the United States of America, so these gig workers, they are classified as independent contractors, ICs, right? Now, for example, Uber, so they have come up with something called as IC plus, that is independent contractor plus, right? So the idea is that yes, the worker is an independent contractor, is not a full-time employee, is not on the rolls of the company full-time, right? So since you're an independent contractor, we'll offer you limited benefits, but we'll offer you some benefits. That's the important point over here, right? And that's the balance over here, that Uber is looking at these guys as an independent contractor. They are independent contractors, but Uber will definitely provide them some kind of health and accidental insurance, right? European Union, it is still trying to find out where that balance lies, that how do you ensure flexibility while also giving some kind of meaningful worker protection, right? So they are looking at expanding social security to include the gig workers, but we don't know exactly what they are doing. Through this article, at least we don't know what they are doing, right? I've already explained to you the concept of multi-apping, so I don't want to repeat it over here too much. But the idea over here is that each gig worker more often than not is using multiple platforms so that they can maximize their earnings and flexibility, right? It gives them independence, it makes them financially strong, right? It helps take care of a lot of things, but there is definitely long-term insecurity, there is definitely vulnerability, right? And of course that no single platform can pick up the entire responsibility. It cannot happen, right? So whatever benefits that we are offering to gig workers, we have to offer them in a portable manner, because today I may be working for Zomato, tomorrow I may be working for Swiggy, day after tomorrow I may be working for Zepto, uske baad I may be working for Big Basket, right? So it may happen that in a span of 4 months I have changed my employer 4 times, because हर किसी का season अलग अलग होता है शायद, right? So how do you make sure that my benefits go along with me? So you have to make the benefits portable, right? So there has to be portability, right? The social security has to be in my name, right, across various platforms, right? So there has to be a personal social security account. That's the first thing, right? So which is something where the eShram portal can probably help, right? So the idea over here is that I should be able to carry my security across the platforms, right? Whichever platform that I'm working with, they have to contribute proportionally to the fund, right? And that's not very difficult. So if you are giving a benefit to a permanent employee for 365 days work, XYZ benefit, and I'm working for you for 75 days, so give me proportional benefits, राइट? सो जिसके लिए भी मैंने 75 डेज ऐसे करके मैंने अगर 4 लोगों के लिए काम करा इन अ ईयर, राइट? सो आई गेट approximately 300 days worth of benefits divided amongst 4 employers, because I worked 75 days on contract for each of these employees. And kind of data that these platforms are holding, don't come and tell me that ki it is difficult to implement, because you don't have to do manual entry. सबका सब कुछ डेटा ऐप के ऊपर सब कुछ है, बैकएंड के ऊपर all the data is dying, right? So the idea over here is that regardless of which platform that I'm a part of, I'm getting my benefit, right? So we have to create and manage a system of portable social security benefits. This is something which is sine qua non. This is a need of the hour, and this is something which the government should put into place in a very quick manner. This should be your major recommendation, right? So get all the gig workers to register, collect contributions from platforms, ensure that these funds are used for equitably for their social security. Government of India can throw in something into that account from its own side, because Government of India is helping the kisans, right? So Government of India can also help the gig workers, right? There's no harm in doing that. Okay. Apart from that, we also have a code on social security, which unfortunately is not getting implemented with the kind of zeal and momentum that we had expected. So this code was passed in 2020. So this was India's first comprehensive legislation on social security benefits, whether it is employees, workers, in the organized sector, in the unorganized sector, gig workers, सबके लिए हमने ये बहुत इच्छा से ये code we had created this code with a lot of purpose, right, with a lot of hope. But unfortunately what has happened is that this code has fallen through the federal cracks in India, right? Central government has passed the code, created the code, enacted the code, etc., but the state governments have not implemented them. It is meaningless piece of paper, right, which is only having any academic use most of the times. That's the unfortunate reality of this code in most of the states, right? So the idea over here is that create a social security fund is what the code had said, right? इसके अंदर contribution will be made from platform companies who are platform companies, your Ubers and Olas, etc. of the world, right? And the government will provide benefits under various schemes. So जीवन ज्योति बीमा योजना, आयुष्मान भारत योजना, जन आरोग्य योजना के benefits government इस account के अंदर डालेगी. So private sector will do something, government will do something, right? So there are many hurdles in implementation, right? How do you determine minimum level of engagement to qualify for social security benefits, right? So these are all technical bureaucratic issues which can be easily ironed out in one day if you want to iron it out. If you don't want to iron it out, you can drag it along as long as you want, right? Apart from that, we have already established that all platforms must pay as per proportionality, as per the principle of proportionality. So please highlight the principle of proportionality in your answers, right? So that is very important, right? Please try to target those workers who are permanently gig workers as of now, right? Don't try to target gig workers who work, do this gig work for like 1 day or 2 day in a month or something like that. Try to target the permanent gig workers as of now. That can also be a suggestion, right? Please get the states on board to do their bit, right? Central government may do it, right? But you know that labor is a concurrent subject. When I say that labor is a concurrent subject, meaning that both the state and the central government have jurisdictions over it, right? Ensure that all the gig workers across the entire country, right, including out of state migrant workers, they get the benefits, because we want not just regionally balanced development, but we want basically a socially balanced development, in the sense that we don't want gig workers in Maharashtra to be having, a fantastic, protection scenario in place, but gig workers in Bengal are suffering like crazy. We don't want that kind of scenario anymore in the country, okay, right? We have to have some kind of parity. That parity is a must, right? Because if that parity is not there, then there is going to be a lot of migration pressure upon your few metropolitan towns that are becoming magnets, and that becomes really unsustainable, right? So that parity has to be there, right? So the idea is that this security code of yours has to be fully implemented. There has to be zero ambiguity over the status of gig workers, right? We have to deliver upon the promise of social security in an equitable manner, in a systematic manner, right? Whether eligibility criteria, platform contribution, center state coordination, these are the challenges that have been identified that need to be tackled. I have already given the solution to you, right? So by and large, the solution is there with you. By and large, the solution is there with you, right? So this is the question that I want you to now tackle based on this entire discussion, right? That examine the challenges and potential solutions for ensuring social security for gig workers in India, and evaluate the role of the code on social security 2020, right? Please answer this question. I am dead sure that this is very important, right? Now moving ahead to something which is very current affairsy, right? So what has happened is that very unexpectedly, inflation in India in the month of October 2024 has been registered as high as 6.2%, right? To give you a very quick background, So in India, you're supposed to ensure that the consumer price index combined remains within the range of 4% plus or minus 2%, right? What is consumer price index combined? It is basically a combination of consumer price index rural and consumer price index urban, right? So it's basically a pan India consumer price index, right? Consumer price index, it tells how the prices are changing or how the prices are behaving for goods and services that the typical consumer may buy, right? So there is a basket of goods and services which has been prepared. We frequently, that is on a monthly basis, we calculate the total cost of purchasing this basket of goods and services, and then we convert that value to, let us say, an index value, and understand how much the prices have increased year on year basis. So we are comparing October 2024 ka prices with October 2023, and we find that if we had paid, let us say, 100 rupees to purchase a basket of goods and services in October 2023, in October 2024 we are paying 106.2 rupees. So there is a 6.2% increase in the prices on a YOY, year on year basis. That is problematic. Why that is problematic? Because RBI's mandate is to ensure that inflation remains within the bracket of 4% plus or minus 2%. The moment inflation is out of 6%, right, then that is okay. But if it remains out of 6%, it remains out of this bracket of 4% plus minus 2%. If it remains out of this bracket for a longish period of time, right, for 2 consecutive quarters, etc., then RBI will have to give an explanation as to what is happening. But the basic idea is that, boss, keep inflation under control. And as of now, inflation seems to be out of control in India, right? So what is happening is that this is coming as a surprise. I'm again reiterating myself that this 6.2% reading is coming as a surprise. This is 14-month high inflation, right? Inflation was 5.5% in September, right? So this is first time in 13 months. This is first time in 13 months that inflation has crossed the 6% mark, right? And it has gone and it has exceeded beyond the RBI's inflation target, right? Now, if you see urban areas के अंदर and rural areas के अंदर, rural areas के अंदर inflation is at 6.7%, right, as compared to urban inflation of 5.6%, right? So this is also something which is, you know, again a surprise, because typically it is urban areas which where you will see a bottleneck, where you will see that the demand has exceeded the supply, etc., etc., right? But now what we are seeing is that rural areas के अंदर inflation is at 6.7%, right? Why is it that inflation is at such a high level? So it's the food inflation which is causing a problem again to us, right? Food inflation is at a 15-month high of 10.9%, right? Why is it that food inflation is soaring so high? That's because of prices of vegetables, fruits, edible oils and pulses. These are the contributing factors. If you look at vegetable prices alone, 42% increase in the month of October, right? So this is a 57-month high, 42% increase in price in the month of October. It's huge, right? Prices of fruits increased by 8.4%, price of pulses increased by 7.4%. So you understand that vegetables are the chief culprit. Why is it that vegetables are the chief culprit? Because excessive rainfall apparently has disrupted the supplies of fruits and vegetables, and that is why you have seen this consequent price rise, right? So the kind of monsoon, the erratic monsoon that we witnessed in the month of August and September has played truant, and the price has been paid in the month of October, right? Similarly, edible oil prices, they have also increased by 9.5%, again because of supply disruptions in Southeast Asia, right? Now, what is the projection like, right? So very quickly to wrap up my discussion, the RBI had projected that average inflation will be around 4.8% in the October, November, December quarter, and will be around 4.2% in the fourth quarter. Now, given the kind of reading that we have gotten for inflation, which is coming as a surprise, nobody had seen this coming. So inflation projections will have to be revised upwards, right? As it is, RBI's inflation projection of 4.5% for the entire year is not playing out, right? Because so far the average inflation has been 4.85%. So RBI had projected 4.5%, but we are getting something higher than this. What is the impact of higher inflation? RBI may have to, RBI definitely cannot reduce the interest rate right now. It cannot go into an accommodative stance right now. It cannot support the growth right now, that is for sure. Whatever else it may have to do, but it cannot lower the interest rates, right? It cannot try to have an accommodative or an expansionary monetary policy stance to support the growth in the Indian economy, right? And India is India is appearing as an outlier because across the world inflation is coming under control. India के अंदर inflation is on the higher side. You'd never want to have that kind of a situation because it spooks the foreign investors. Because if they see higher inflation, higher interest rate, higher inflation, higher interest rate, they may get spooked, right? So the idea is that yes, with better arrivals of fruits and vegetables and everything else, this will come down. This may be a temporary spike, right? But the idea is that maybe prices of fruits and vegetables may take some more time to cool down, some more time to come under control, right? Edible oil prices again because of supply constraints may remain on the higher side, right? Services inflation, core inflation, they have also been increasing a little bit, right? Core inflation has been at a 10-month high. What is core inflation? So from your regular inflation or from your headline inflation or consumer price index, remove fruits and vegetables, remove fuel, right? Remove all those items which have a sudden jump in prices and a sudden dip in prices. So remove these factors which cause a lot of volatility, and then whatever else remains, that is core inflation, right? That is very stable, right? Those prices change, but they change in a stable manner, right? So that's the idea that you need to keep in mind. What about interest rate cuts, right? So like I mentioned to you that there was hope, was is very important, past tense. There was hope that interest rates may start falling from December, राइट नाउ दैट होप हैज बीन एक्सटिंग्विश्ड, बुझा दिया गया है आपकी उम्मीद को, राइट? आप अपनी उम्मीदों को बुझा दीजिए बिकॉज इन्फ्लेशन इज आउटसाइड ऑफ आरबीआई's comfort zone, right? So rate cuts may start maybe in the month of January, February if everything is fine, or maybe in the first quarter of 2025. We will have to wait and watch, right? And right now the US dollar is strengthening quite a bit after Donald Trump's re-election, right? There is a weakening of the rupee. So don't expect the interest rates to be reduced, because if the interest rate is reduced further, right, so India will not be a very attractive destination for dollars and dollars will leave India. So we cannot afford that, right? So we need to attract dollars, for which interest rates may have to be kept a little on the higher side so that government securities के अंदर interests are higher, so that investors who are putting money into India, they get a decent return, right? So we will have to look at a lot of factors, but to cut a long story short, higher inflation or higher than expected inflation has definitely pushed interest rate reduction outside the purview of at least this calendar year, right? We are not seeing a rate reduction. We shouldn't see a rate reduction is what the idea is, right? So these are my two articles done, guys. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to answer. I hope that you'll do answer writing practice based on this discussion. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.